students. I'm Miss Rutledge.
And I'm Mrs. Roy.
We are doing math videos together today. So we are going to look at lessons 3, 4, and 6. We're going to start by looking at some decimals. So you can see this number up here. It is a decimal number. We know that because it has a decimal point. So a decimal is a number that has the digits in a tenths place, maybe a hundredths place. This one even has the thousandths place. But as long as there's a number here, it means it's a decimal number.
And that is to the right of the decimal.
Now this decimal point, that's a different definition. The decimal point is actually the period that always separates this ones and the tenths column. We don't have a once. Once is not a word.
You know what I always do too? I always say, put your hand over your mouth, and if you can feel your spit, then you're saying the tenths, hundredths, and thousands. So
Oh, really?
tenths.
Tenths.
You have to cover your mouth though, so you don't get it on someone
because
else.
it does. It spits.
Hundredths.
I like it. Yeah. So these are all spitting ones, and these are normal ones. So ones, tens. Yeah, those don't spit.
No.
I like it. Okay. So we're going to first look at and label our place values. So you remember, you should know this from 4th grade, but just in case, you want to label those
Sure.
for us?
All right, so I like to start with the decimal point. That's my starting place. And I like to go to the left of it. So the first place to the left is a 3, and he is sitting in the ones place. If I have 3 $1 bills, I've got $3. This 2 is sitting in the tens place. And then I like to think of the decimal point as a mirror. So if I look in the mirror, I see myself. The only thing is there's no such thing as a once place. That just sounds really funny. So the one exception is the ones does not mirror. So you start at the tens. So if this is tens, then this first one on this side is the tenths. If I had another digit out here, he would be in the hundreds. So I've got the hundredths. I could have wrote these as numbers. And if I've got even another place value out here, sitting right here, that would be my thousands. So this one right here with the 5 would be the thousandths. And all of these, if you notice, to the right of that decimal have THS.
Awesome.
I didn't write that very big.
Yep, those are all the spitting ones. I think it looks good.
All right.
So we're going to start by looking at some numbers and some models. So the first one that you have on your paper is this one right here, which is 3 tenths.
Okay, and if I use my base 10 blocks, do you want to go ahead and get the base 10 blocks out?
Yep.
You're going to have models that look like this. And if we are going to shade 3 tenths of those in, if we count how many we actually have, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So to shade those, how many would I need, Mrs. Rutledge?
Ooh, well, if I only have 3, I think you would just color in 3 of those.
Okay, I'm
and
going to do that.
this is actually our tens blocks. You've seen where a tens is about this wide. So this would just be the 3 of them with the tens block. So 3 tenths would be 3 of these guys. And then Mrs. Roy is going to show us our picture again.
Do you know why they call it 10 tenths? Because how many of it would it take to make the next block that we have?
Yeah, it would take 10. And
10 of
then we
these.
would go into our next column, which would be our ones.
So here's that picture. There is 3 tenths of those shaded in.
So that's our model for our 3 tenths. That would be what our model would be.
Okay, and we also need to write it in word form. So what that literally means is, let's write it in words. How do I say it? 3 tenths. I'm going to write down what I say. So, and I'm going to write it in words, not numbers. 3, am I going off the screen?
Nope.
Tenths. And that's all I have to do for word form.
Yep.
And then the second part was decimal form. So I'm going to write it as a decimal. I have to know place value. So I go back to that decimal point and I say 3 tenths. Okay, I had the ones. There's no such thing as a once. Tens, tenths. Oh yeah, it's the first place. So 3 tenths. Did I do that right?
Yep, awesome.
Alrighty.
Okay, so next example, we're going to look at, I'm actually going to keep your word so I don't have to rewrite it. Our next one is going to be 9 hundredths. Okay, so if we have 9 hundredths, since the bottom number is 100, I can't use this one anymore because I only have 10. I actually have to flip it on over and use one that is a hundreds grid. So notice that I've added 10 more lines, so I have a total of 100. And out of this 100, I am going to color in, well, what was my number? I'm going to color in 9 of those.
And to show you what that would look like with base 10 blocks, here is a long, which is made up of 10 little ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so if I need 9/10 of those, I split them apart. I literally cut them apart, Mrs. Rutledge. No, I'm just kidding.
Uh-oh.
And I have 9 of them, so you can kind of see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the 10ths.
Awesome. So, and then showing you my picture that I was coloring in while Mrs. Roy was showing you, I only colored in 9. Now, also notice how lovely my coloring is. I wasn't sloppy and slopped it all over, so you could see my model and it be really nice and beautiful. So, now going over here to the board, we have word form. I'm literally, just like Mrs. Roy said, I'm just going to say it like it is. So, I have 9. And I can't say tenths because that's not a tenth. That would be my hundredths. And just like she said, this one kind of makes you spit because it's got the THS hundredths on it. And now in decimal form, I have to, again, think about, okay, 9. I know I'm going to have a 9, but where does that decimal point go? Well, if it's in the hundredths position, it wouldn't go here because then it would be in the tenths position. So I have to leave a 0 in the tenth spot and then put my decimal there. That way this is holding the place of the tenths, and then my 9 is in the hundredths position.
All right, let's go on to question number 3. I could have left some of that, but that's all right. Number 3 is looking at the place of the digit, the value of it, and then even going from word form and expanded form. So we're going to kind of put it all together. So here's the number that we have. It wants to know the place of the digit. I'm going to shorten this instead of writing all that out. So the place, and it has the 9 underlined. We've got to figure out what place is the 9 sitting in. Well, there, I always go back to the decimal. There's my ones, no such thing as a oneth, so tens, tenths, hundreds, hundredths. It's just how I always do it. I always think about a mirror. So my 9 is sitting in the hundredths place. Notice I'm putting THS.
Awesome.
And then the value of that underlined digit, like I said, it's in the hundredths, and there's 9 of them. So I would say it's worth 9 hundredths. And just like Mrs. Rutledge said, you've got to hold your place with a 0 and put your 9 in the hundredths place. And word form, exactly like I said it. This time, though, we're going to have to do the whole number, not just the 9. So we're going to start here. We have 3. This decimal point.
Ooh, what do
you know
you
what this
say
decimal
for
point
that?
means?
The decimal point, well, I can't just say 379. I mean, I've got to put a word for that. What's that word? Ooh, and
3 and 70. I read this part as a whole number. 79. I'm going to have to go down here. And then we said the 9 was setting where? In the hundredths. Place.
So you always read that as a whole number, so whatever it is, 79, and then your label at the end is just whatever position it's sitting in.
Yeah. The last word is the last place value. All right, and then the last part, this expanded form, you've learned a little bit about it in the previous lessons. We're going to take each digit, and when I think of the word expand, like a balloon expands, it spreads apart. So I'm going to expand this number apart. So this 3 is sitting in what place?
The
ones. So I'm going to go 3 times 1. Is that how you would have done it?
Yep.
Plus, we don't have to do anything for the decimal point.
Not for
so
the
we can
decimal.
say 7 times.
Uh-oh.
This is the tricky part because it's not just, I can't just put 7 times 10.
Yeah.
Because 7 times 10 is 70, and that's not worth $70.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually, we're going to make it a fraction. It's 7/10, if that's how we were to say it. So 7 times 1/10. And Mrs. Rutledge, we know that in multiplication we can say 1, or we can say 2 times 4, or we can go 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, right? So the same thing works here. I can say 7 times 1/10, or I could go 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10 7 different times.
Yeah.
And I would have
This is
7
way
tenths.
easier
This
to
is
write.
way easier. Okay, and
Makes it
then my
shorter.
last digit, 9 times, and the 9 is sitting in the hundredths place, so I'm going to say 1 over 100. That's 100ths. And I think I have it.
There we go. Expanded form is always going to be your longest because you have to break it apart. Now, Mrs. Roy, can you explain why did we put parentheses around those?
I did that because I separated it out, so each number kind of got its own grouping, so to say. And then I also wanted to point out, if it's on the right side of that decimal, it's going to have fractions here.
Yep.
If
always gonna
not,
be
it's a whole
fractions.
number.
I like that. And again, we just put parentheses. That way we can really see it and really be able to tell each part separate. Because sometimes, you have to make sure your time signs looks like times and your addition signs look like addition.
It could get really messy if we didn't stay organized.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to do one more. And this one we've kind of tripped it up a little bit because we're not starting with the standard form. We're starting with word form. So we're actually starting with 5 and 6. What else did I have? 100. You want to go tell him? What we're doing? Thousands. Took me a little bit to write that out. Okay, so we've got word form this time. So we're going to start by putting it in standard form because that's easier. So I first have 5. Ooh, and just like Mrs. Roy just showed us, the and is the decimal. So I have to put my decimal. Now I read, this is my label down here. So this is just the number I'm writing. 614. 614. And then I have to check and make sure that it ended in the thousands. So if that position's in the thousands, and it is, so I'm good. If it wasn't, then I might have to move that number.
If this said 5 and 600, 10,000?
Ooh, 10,000s.
Then you would have to
put a 0.
Put a 0 in there so that the 4 would end in the 10,000.
Yep, so you can always write this as a number and then check your digit and make sure you don't need any zeros or anything. Okay, now expanded, we're going to look at it, and I like to, sometimes I put them on different lines, so I'm going to show you that way. Mrs. Roy showed you the other way. I hope I can still see it in the video. Ooh, barely.
We'll tilt you down.
There we go. All right, so my 5, I just wrote out all my numbers. So 5, I'm going to do it times 1 because it's in the ones column. I'm going to put my parentheses around it to separate it and then add my plus. Then I'm doing my 6, which is in the tenths, and I have to write that as a fraction. Doing my plus sign there. My 1 is in the hundredths, so it's 1 out of 100. And then my 4 is in the thousands, so I have to go all the way down to 1,000. And then again, I can always put my equal sign at the end. So again, you can do it. You can write it straight out just like Mrs. Roy did it, or if it helps you, you can write it like that. All right, so you've got some awesome work to get started, and we are looking forward to it.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you for the next video.